Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm gonna show my face for a minute. It's not a nice face to see, but
Morning. Well, I join you in
we have the same barber, I see.
nah. That's right. How much do you pay? I pay $0.
I think I paid $100 years ago to buy a shaver. Where are you based, Carson?
In Colorado, just south of Denver.
Okay. Okay.
You?
I'm in the Bay of San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
I'm originally from Italy, as you can probably hear from my, not from
A
my
little
accent,
bit.
but yes, but
So then I have to ask you, where am I from originally?
oh, no idea.
I was born and raised and educated in Germany.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
How how old were you when you moved?
I don't know how old I was. I've been here for 25 years. Let's put it this way.
Okay. Yeah. I've been here for what is now 18 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey Rob,
Cosmo, hello.
we are ex exchanging war stories about barbers that you probably don't know about.
No, I caught the end of it and I was lost.
Good
Didn't
morning,
miss
everybody.
much. Let's put it this way.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dad.
People joining.
Oh,
Hey, good morning, everyone.
let me change my I have to change my name every time because it doesn't save my affiliation. Let's say. Change. All right.
Right now.
See Alex here. Hey, Alex.
Hi there, good afternoon.
Good
We
morning.
have a good group of people today. It's awesome.
Well, I'm part of this group, so I cannot be that good.
Just awesome crowd for a first kickoff meeting. Thank you all.
This
You
is
are
the
welcome.
iMason. This is the iMason meeting.
This is an OCP Masons joint meeting.
Oh, good.
Crossover episode.
Everyone is welcome.
All right, Alex, what do you think? We'll give it another minute or two as people shuffle in.
Yeah.
Who is from iMason?
We will go through that. We'll start out. Alex will share the agenda. We'll give you an introduction for those because these are two communities coming together. Some of you are very familiar with iMasons and the iMasons Climate Accord, and some of you are more familiar with the Open Compute Project, and maybe some of you are familiar with neither of them, and that's okay too. We'll share a little background on both organizations, why this alliance has come together, and then the charter and direction of this work stream.
So I'm assuming we will have regular meetings, right?
That's correct.
Yep. We'll go through all those logistics once we sort of set the table for why we're here and why we've convened. So Rob, perhaps the workstream leads could introduce ourselves, and then Miranda, we could hand it over to you to give some context on iMasons before giving it back over to you, Rob, to give context on OCP, and then Cliff, you can talk about the alliance. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Thanks, Alex.
Great. So I'll start. This is Alex Rakow. I lead sustainability for Schneider Electric, and I'll be one of the workstream leads here. I've worked with OCP, leading the sustainability project, and on the iMason side, leading the equipment working group, so I'm lucky enough to have some perspective over the activities on both sides and why there's so much potential in this collaboration. And I will hand it over to Lalit.
Thank you, Alex. Hey, hi, it's Lalit from Microsoft. I lead the lifecycle assessment for cloud hardware in Microsoft. I'm based in India. I've been working with this group for I think for 3 to 4 weeks, and have been it's been really great working with you folks and really learning about this stuff.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
on a call.
I think.
Ryan?
Hey, Lalit, I'll go
Ryan,
next.
Yep,
Hey,
thank you.
Ryan Cornwell, the Technical Program Manager with Google Data Centers on the Advanced Technology Innovation Team. I've also been with this work stream for a couple weeks and really excited to be a part of it and hoping to help move the needle forward.
Andrew.
Pass it off to last but not least.
Me? My name is Andrew Desmoni. I'm with Schneider Electric. Have fairly new to the OCP work stream, but have been working on the iMasons Climate Accord equipment working group for the past almost year, maybe.
And so with that, Miranda, perhaps you could give us some background and context on the iMasons Climate Accord. Miranda Gardner is the Executive Director of the Climate Accord.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. So nice to see so many familiar faces and names. As Alex said, my name is Miranda Gardner. I am the Executive Director of the iMasons Climate Accord, and pretty excited to finally kick this off, as one of the foundations of the Climate Accord launch was this work that we're talking about today. So one quick housekeeping: if you are not speaking, if you could please hit mute. There's quite a bit of feedback coming through, and I just want to be sure everyone can hear what we're talking about today. I have a short slide deck just to go through the foundations of the Climate Accord. Again, if you have never heard of us or are just not as familiar with us, please let me know. Can everyone see this now? I think, okay, I got a heads up, a thumbs up. As quick context for the Climate Accord, it was founded by Dean Nelson as well as the iMasons Advisory Council. So the iMasons has been around for almost 8 years now. About 2 years ago, they started to realize that one of their 4 strategic industry pillars, sustainability, was starting to take a bit more of a life of its own and really needed a focused and more immediate kind of strategy around what this industry could do in terms of carbon reductions. So the iMasons Advisory Council met in February of 2022. You can see quite a number of key leaders in the digital infrastructure industry, and decided that the Climate Accord needed to be launched officially in April of 22. So we are slowly closing in on our 2nd anniversary of the Climate Accord. At that time, we launched with 73 companies. A lot of them you will recognize from this slide, and their logos are hyperscaler members, co-location facilities, product, finance, service, software, etc. We are now over 250 member companies, and so we're pretty excited to see where this is going to go once we pass year 2 this April. That said, our member overview includes organizations and individuals committed to this industry collaboration. We are focused in on 3 major pillars: so materials, power, and equipment. And as Alex noted, he is our chair for the equipment working group. And so those groups meet on a biweekly cadence to discuss and push forward tools, webinars, other educational opportunities for the industry to really drive their companies and their teams forward in this goal of net zero carbon. At the Climate Accord, though, we do not set a target for that. We do have companies that are somewhere like a Google or a Meta of the world. We also have companies that are 1 person, 5 people startups, and we want to be sure that they all have the opportunity to join us on this journey. So our governing body is made up of those various industry players that you saw in terms of the logos, as well as Dean Nelson, our founder. And then our working group chairs are made up of a number of other people, again, really giving us a rounded perspective on what's going on in the industry. At this point, between the working groups and the governing body, about 25% of our member companies are represented through these various groups. So they are participating and being the voice of this. There will be additional opportunities coming up through this year. such as the one we're talking about today, with different industry partnerships. Key themes, we have 5 of them, but for 24, I'm honing in on 3 and 5, collaboration and transparency. We need to be better about this. We need to stop talking about it and doing this. Come to the table really ready to dialogue and discuss what is going on, what is going right, what is going wrong, where there are lessons learned, and how we can be supportive partners of each other. We have a maturity model too. This is our kind of second foundational pillar of the Climate Accord. This is where we are looking at those various levels of where companies are on their climate journey, especially again with the carbon reduction. So all 3 of our working groups are doing individual maturity models. By the end of the year, our goal is to be at about a 70–80% completion of the entirety of the maturity model, so that your organizations, again, if you are involved with us, can map to this and really look at the strategies from industry peers so that you can then move forward on your journey. Quick successes to date, and I'm happy to share this with whoever like, but these are all part of our website. You know, we've had working groups for about the last 6 months. We have a couple of open letters and other industry publications, including 3 case studies that rolled out this fall. So huge kudos to our working groups for not only getting stood up last year in 6 months, but also getting 3 case studies out the door and published for anyone's consumption and use moving forward. So I really give them a huge amount of applause there for getting work out and out the door. In addition, today, in terms of getting involved, we've got some upcoming research and collaborations moving forward, such as, again, our industry partnership with OCP, more educational webinars. We've got a quarterly hot topic debate series. The first one will be presented at DCD New York on the power and energy grid transition and how we're getting to a cleaner grid. What is the reality of that, both from an economic and environmental point of view? Our second one, TBD on the date, will be about materials responsible supply chain, who's really responsible, and digging into what's going on globally when we talk about something like that. We will continue with monthly case studies. So if any of you have a case study or a publication you'd like to cross-publish with us, please reach out. We'd love to get that up on our website and showcase your organization and the work you're doing. We have a movers program. We also have a LinkedIn page, our local chapters. So if you are involved with the iMasons or just with us, you can get involved there. And of course, there's a number of upcoming iMasons events. So hopefully we'll see some of you at PTC this weekend. There is an event Saturday. Again, if you haven't heard about that, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for the time this morning. And I'm going to hand this back over to Alex and OCP. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Miranda. Yeah, Rob, if you wouldn't mind doing the same on the OCP side for those that are coming from the iMasons world, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, let me get to the right screen here. Okay, hi, good morning, good afternoon. Rob Coyle. I'm the Community Technical Program Manager here at the Open Compute Project. I'm one of 15 or so people that work for the foundation that are responsible for the framework of the activities within the Open Compute Project. Let's get right into it here, as long as I can advance to the next slide. There we go. For those of you who are not familiar, the Open Compute Project really meets the market and shapes the future. We have hyperscale open innovation led by a community, which are the volunteers and hopefully many of you who joined this call. We follow 5 tenets: openness, sustainability, impact, scale, and efficiency. For many years, the tenets were only 4, but in 2022, sustainability was added as our 5th tenet. It was an undercurrent and a big part of what the Open Compute Project has done over the past 13 or so years, but we've really brought it to the forefront to focus on it. Through these tenets, we produce shared innovations, community-driven standards, shared best practices, and then we drive rapid adoption and transformation. To give you kind of a place where we sit in our ecosystem, you can see us there in that second layer from the bottom. You know, our peers are organizations like the SDIA, ASHRAE, and others. You may recognize some of these other logos depending on where you sit in the ecosystem. The Open Compute Project, we are a corporate member organization. We have just about 330 corporate members, and we have over 6,000 global active participants. These are volunteers and leaders within our community that are responsible for work streams like this one and projects within the Open Compute Project. We have over 6,000 attendees at our in-person events annually and 10,000 virtual. There are over 240 OCP marketplace SKUs that you can find on our website today. And those are provided by 50 OCP solution providers. And our impact on product revenue to the vendor ecosystem was $18 billion in 2021. And we are on track for a $36 billion influence by 2026. Similar to Miranda's slide, you may recognize that some of the logos on that slide are the same here, and some that are not. It's not uncommon that if you sit at one of these companies that you are already a member of one of our organizations. As I mentioned, of those 6,000 plus volunteer leaders, many of those are volunteer project leaders. We'll go into the project layering, but these are volunteers that of those member companies dedicate their time to leading projects and sub-projects within the Open Compute Project. They're led by a steering committee, which again is another group of volunteers from those companies. You can see the associated subject that they are responsible for here. And then the team itself, which I'm a member of, is just about 15 people. And we are really here to maintain and build the framework to serve the community. So the activity and work that happens within our project and work streams are really done by the volunteers. And we're responsible for the events, the structure, and the support system to make that happen. You've gotten kind of a picture of where the Open Compute Project sits in the ecosystem.
Pelo Zoom.
Workstream. Oh, if you could go on mute, please. There we go. The Sustainability Project is one of 12 top-level projects. This work stream will sit underneath that Sustainability Project in the top left of your screen. Along with sustainability, we have networking, rack and power, storage, server, and others. Beneath those, they may have specialized subjects that are called sub-projects. Those sub-projects are responsible for other work streams that are more specific in their subject matter. And that is it for the overview. I think we'll hand it over to Cliff.
Thank you, Rob. And I'm going to just share my screen. And what I wanted to do was just take a couple of minutes to brief everyone on the discussions that started almost not a year ago, but 9 months ago. I think last June, we started talking with Jeff Omchuk about moving forward on an alliance with iMasons. And we actually sealed the deal last October at OCP Global Summit. And since then, we've been working to establish the leadership for this work stream that's on the call today. And I really wanted to just share with everyone, I have 3 charts, I think it's 3, maybe 4, about the framework that we put together in the discussions we had for the alliance. And really what we started discussing was how do we bring together the complementary strengths of OCP and iMasons. Sorry about that. And really what we see is iMasons has a large and global community very focused on building a digital infrastructure or future, which includes data centers, a very strong overlap with OCP, and also a very large initiative in sustainability with the International Climate Accord. For those of you that aren't familiar with the OCP, what we are known for is having a very active IT hardware community that looks both at IT equipment and data center facilities. And we have a fairly unique process set up where we can create open hardware specifications and best practices, have them approved by our steering committee. And that enables many of the vendors around the world producing IT equipment and data center facilities equipment to build equipment that is required by the end users, and also that gives us a large ability to impact what equipment gets built. And so what we look at is today, iMasons and OCP, we believe that together we can impact the market on a global scale with joint initiatives where we change the data center supply chain to deliverable, sustainable, large-scale data centers. And that's really the impetus that brought us together. And we did establish an alliance, as I said, and we said that we wanted to focus on work efforts within iMasons and the Climate Accord and focus on sustainability. And we wanted to make sure as part of the alliance that there's alignment on sustainability related work efforts within OCP and iMasons. We will have regular governance calls between the executive leadership at OCP and iMasons. And of course, we'll going forward now have meetings, hopefully in this work stream at the working level very regularly that will produce some tangible results. The areas that we identified for initial exploration in the agreement included carbon modeling, looking at construction materials, and how can we look at sustainability around those metrics for sustainability, and looking at water and heat and how do we improve sustainability around usage of that around a digital infrastructure. So, and moving forward, what can we expect for 2024? Well, here's a rough sketch of what we've been talking about. And of course, this may change, but here's what we hope we will see. We did announce the alliance to all of the members of iMasons and OCP in early Jan. We are now, today, January 17th, launching the carbon disclosure workstream. That's a joint workstream with iMasons under the OCP Sustainability Project. At Regional Summit, with a reasonable amount of work achieved between now and then, confidence built that we can deliver a tangible result, we want to announce the alliance in a broader scale, probably do a news release at Regional, and potentially hold some sort of breakout session or workshop around what we're doing. In October, we would hope to see the first approved OCP contributions around the carbon disclosure label format, be it digital or printed, and some sort of database to back that up. We also want to hold a joint workshop potentially with iMasons at OCP Global Summit. And we've had discussions about that. And we also hope that perhaps by the end of this year, this might be a stretch goal, that we can add some sort of disclosure program to the OCP marketplace, which will be modeled after another program that we launched last year, OCP Safe, where IT equipment could get badged by the whatever carbon metrics we come up with and be visible in our marketplace. And that could even involve a third-party auditor that audits how that carbon disclosure was created and certifies that it meets certain standards that actually may have been produced by our work streams, our joint work streams. So again, lots of ideas, and moving forward, it's up to the people in the work stream to now set the direction and guide it. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to the workstream project leadership. And thanks for the time today.
Thanks, Cliff. Yeah, so we thought we could give some context for why we chose to focus on this issue, that is carbon disclosure, a carbon label. From what you've just heard, it's clear we have a ton of potential energy here. We have an incredible community engaged and a lot of expertise in the room. We also have the right infrastructure in place, and a lot of that coming from the OCP side in terms of developing a standard and guideline. So why are we focused on this topic in particular? And I will also take a pause while I share my screen. So why scope 3? Scope 3 is going to be the next challenge in terms of data center sustainability. Not that we've forever solved scopes 1 and 2. There's still work to be done, of course, in renewable energy procurement and efficiency on an ongoing basis. But why is scope 3 receiving so much attention? So here you see some data from Meta and Microsoft and Amazon. For those of you who are on the call from those companies, you may note, if you're shrewd, that this is possibly a year out of date. I'll update this with the latest environmental reports when I have them. But the point here is that the vast majority of the carbon footprint for these hyperscalers is scope 3. And increasingly, this is the picture for most colo players as well. So some of this reflects success and progress and investment already in renewable energy procurement, but it's important to recognize the vast proportion, the large proportion that scope 3 plays in these carbon footprints, and how much of that is upstream. So that is reflected by the embodied carbon of the materials and equipment that go into building the data center. And that's why the iMasons Climate Accord focused on those 2 items as 2 of the 3 working groups. So 1 on materials, 1 on equipment. What can we do to start to address this issue? And it needs to be addressed because we have hyperscalers who are customers for colo providers, and colo providers themselves, all who have net zero and carbon neutrality goals that demand attention not just on scopes 1 and 2, but on scope 3 as well. So we need some way of not just measuring, but starting to draw down scope 3 and being able to demonstrate that reduction in a way that supports progress toward these net zero goals. Just a little more detail here. You can see corporate purchases and capital goods making up the majority of the pie at Amazon. Same thing at Meta. Microsoft in red here is use of sold products, but still a huge proportion in blue is purchased goods. So that's the area that we want to focus on. What can we do as an industry to drive down scope 3 from purchased goods and capital goods? Well, we need good data. Without that data, data center operators are not able to set reduction goals for vendors that will then accrue to them achieving your own net zero goals. You can't use the data to tabulate the impact of a data center design change on the overall carbon footprint of that data center. And then, of course, you need that data to compare one product to another to make purchasing decisions. And it's there where we've really decided to focus on this, what's motivating our work in this joint program. The ability to compare one vendor to another, one solution to another, one design to another, not just in terms of cost and speed to market, but in terms of carbon. So what are our options for carbon disclosure? And here it's helpful to do a little bit of background on what we've been working on the iMasons side and the equipment working group over the past year. So phase 1 of our work at iMasons has been to describe the diversity of approaches that exist for measuring and reporting on the embodied carbon of the equipment that vendors sell into the data center industry. So there's the materials disclosure form, there's the full life cycle analysis that results in environmental product disclosure. You can use the CDP footprint for a vendor and then prorate that, do an economic input-output model. So we're publishing case studies on each of these that describe the advantages and disadvantages of both in terms of the resources required, both money and human resources, and the precision and accuracy of the data it provides. And so from there, we want to focus on the most rigorous of those options, which is a life cycle analysis for the product, and try to figure out how sensitive the outcome is to differences in inputs. So EPD example here, just to run through kind of what the output of the life cycle analysis looks like. It includes not just information on embodied carbon, but also material breakdown, substance assessment, environmental impacts across the life cycle, including end of life and circularity. So there are a lot of inputs that go into developing that, different programs that exist, third-party programs. You have to choose the right product category rule and product-specific rule. There's software, of course, to support the process that can influence the outcomes, and then you're drawing on data from a certain database. So I want to figure out within that, on the iMason side, how sensitive is the process to changes in those variables. And the idea there is figuring out how comparable one data point is to another. Again, one solution to another, one vendor to another. So that is the heart of what we want to focus on in terms of our activity here. And I'll quickly switch over to our charter for the OCP iMasons combined project. So there's a couple of different questions or different areas of work that we need to focus on. First, we need to standardize data, as I was just describing, to support that comparability. You could have two vendors who are both investing a lot of time and resources into measuring and reporting on the carbon impact of their product, but if it's not comparable, then it's really it's not realizing its value for data center operators, for the purchaser. And so we want to organize this work around the development of a carbon label. And that carbon label would represent not just the data point that's needed, but also give an opportunity for vendors to describe how that data point was arrived at, which would in turn give us an opportunity to establish maybe a confidence interval for that data and start to get toward that comparability. So within this, we have some questions to answer, and we'll be looking for your feedback on this. There's been a lot of discussion and visioning around a physical label that could be placed on the equipment inside the data center, QR code that could lead to the information that we're looking for here. But we also want to make sure that this information is valuable in the design and engineering process. So we need to figure out how it can be delivered at the RFI, RFP stage to support procurement, and then how to make that data available digitally to support the digital models that are used in data center design. And then from there, what are the use cases of having a physical label on the equipment, and what would that look like? So there's a lot to determine there. We could also decide what other data points we might want to include on the label, including operational efficiency and emissions, so not just embodied, but operations phase, circularity, end-of-life instructions, things like that. So all of that will be a community decision here. The second part of this first phase is the guidance around acceptable methods for measuring and reporting on embodied carbon. So we know that we have suppliers at varying levels of maturity when it comes to measuring and reporting on the carbon associated with their products. We don't want to develop a label and a standard and then have it only be accessible to a certain portion of the data center supply chain. So we need to figure out what are those acceptable methods, what guidance should we be offering on how to perform each method, and making sure that we're communicating advantages and disadvantages of each. And this, again, is ongoing work that's already happening on the iMason side, but it's going to be complementary work to what's going on in this group. Any comments or questions before I move on, since I've been monologuing here for a while? So phase 2 will be, how do we get more suppliers involved? And I think that, all along here, this is all subject to the consensus of the group. It's subject to the input of those who are going to join this effort. But this is just sort of a first vision. Once we have those label established that we can stand behind, we have some guidance at how that label can be populated by vendors in ways that are practical for a variety of vendors. Then we can start to think about, okay, what's the responsibility of the data center operator? What kind of RFI or RFP language or requirement could we coalesce around that would help bring suppliers into the process? Because it is going to be an investment of one size or another, so there needs to be a motivating interest in recruiting vendors into the process, into engaging in that measurement and reporting. And the more we can standardize around that, the more it will help data center vendors not have to answer varying requirements depending on who their customer is and kind of reinvent the wheel over and over again. They could have a standard way of doing it. It's established in phase 1, and then in phase 2, that's matched by a standard requirement that's coming from their customers. Then I think that's where we're going to see quick progress. And then finally, thinking about a digitized format, how could we organize and aggregate this data into a database that could then maybe support those kinds of digital design models and things like that we were talking about before. So I know we've had some initial discussion among the workstream leads. Ryan at Google suggested that we focus on this label first and foremost. I think that's a good suggestion. Figure out what it is we want to report before we get into how it should be reported. But any other suggestions, any other comments at this point in the process, now that you've just seen this for the first time, many of you?
Will we use netconf and Yang to report this data?
Will we use what to report the data, Hisham?
Netconf and Yang.
I'm not familiar with that. Anyone else?
Netconf and Yang is like SNMP, is a way to collect data from the infrastructure about whatever you want. I think you have a data model.
Yeah, this is Bijan. I think the community is going to get together and kind of define the way forward and kind of set out all the requirements for interoperability, formatting, standards, all these things. So that's TBD. So if you have some, opinions, join in and put that into the pie.
Yep, perfect answer, Bijan. Karsten, I see your hand.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Alex, and everybody else on the call. So the question I have, since you asked, the creation of the label and the reporting that is in comparison to perhaps what you mentioned, the creation of a standardized process on how to measure, perhaps a more simpler method or a task, while the creation of how to standardize the measurement so that it actually really becomes comparable, that might be a little bit more tricky. Any thoughts and ideas and on how we are planning on bringing everybody on board, so to speak, to have a common goal? I mean, not a common goal, but a common process.
To me, Karsten, that's the heart of the challenge. It'll be relatively easy for us to design a label and say, okay, these are the data points we want on the label. The first thought that occurs to me is that we should have one of the fields on the label identify the process that was used to arrive at the number. So you can say, okay, here's the embodied carbon number for this piece of equipment. We did an LCA, it conformed with ISO 14025, or you can say we did an economic input-output model. And that tells the operator something about, again, a confidence interval. Andrea has been thinking about, are there ways that we can sort of normalize the responses based on what we learn about the different means of arriving at the data? It's a challenge, and I think it's again something we're going to be focused, I think, more on the iMason side within the equipment working group. But to me, that's the big hill to get over. If we have a label and we have some kind of confidence in the data being comparable one label to another, then that's actually going to give the label value. So it's going to be the heart of our work, I think.
And if I could just add to that too, I think the first hurdle is having the data come forward and being transparent about what it is, just like Alex said, having that disclaimer about what methodology was used, because right now there is a lack of the data, of the carbon data to begin with. So, normalizing is going to be very important, but transparency and education around what the methodologies are and kind of disclaimers about not using them for comparison willy-nilly is going to be our important first step. And then I think even when if we can't get to normalization necessarily like on a flat out basis, taking into account the kind of activities that are going into carbon reduction, which is a total next step, but that will be the ultimate goal.
Bill, at Aligned.
Yes, thank you. So, and this is great. We've actually been doing this for the last couple of years using a labeling schema with a QR code related to a database. When we started talking to our supply chain partners about collecting this data, and we were talking about EPDs and LCAs, the majority of them just looked at me like I had two heads. Over the course of these 2 years with the work that Miranda's been doing, that shifted tremendously. So now there's a lot more of our suppliers that are going through that process, and we've had to do a lot of education, bring the tools and services, all the ones that were listed earlier. But we're happy to share what we've been doing. We've been using Molg's origin mark technology, and we were part of the original discussion with with the team, with Dean and the others. and those very, very early discussions 2 years ago. So happy to share what we've learned. And it's a journey. By no means is it is a complete system. Ultimately, we're looking to show from a supplier, get down to the true bill of materials for that particular product and track that entity all the way through its life cycle, from point of construction, manufacture, to finished goods, to delivery, operations, and we're tracking and all our commissioning data against it, all our operational data against it, and then any recycle, reuse that's possible with some of those. Now, given a lot of these things are 30-year lifespan, so like a generator, we won't see much of that, but certainly some of the other smaller components, we're tracking that today. So, and then to the point about buildings as well. So looking at the low carbon concrete and all of it. Anyway, I'll stop talking, but we're happy to share our learnings with the team.
Thanks so much for offering to help us to learn from your experience. And Rob is on the phone from Moog. We met with Moog as we were envisioning this process. So I think we have a lot to build off of in terms of origin mark. And I think we should kind of, as a North Star, avoid reinventing the wheel where a working wheel exists in this process. So we want to learn from the experience that already exists in the industry. Hi, Cosimo.
Hi, Alex. Quick question, and I'm tangentially involved in all this conversation, so I don't know if this point has been addressed already, but sometimes perfection is the enemy of actually action. So I was wondering whether we envision like a different tiers where we start. Scope 3, if you want to get very detailed, it's I don't want to say it's almost impossible, but it's very hard to track it to completion, right? So do we have a strategy to maybe be quick but not 100% accurate, and then hone down the accuracy as we learn, instead of trying to be perfect from the get-go?
I think it's a good comment, Cosimo, and I think that's part of maybe our approach in starting with a label. And as Andrew was saying, let's do transparency first. Let's make sure that we're collecting the data as a first step. And then from there, try to build standardization incrementally, hopefully quickly. But I think starting with okay, here's the data point that's expected. Here are options for producing it. See how much data we can accrue before we start getting into, these are the guide rails you have to follow in order to arrive at that data point. And again, part of what you can disclose, part of what a vendor like Schneider could disclose, is what process was used to arrive at the embodied carbon data or the operational carbon data. Other comments, suggestions? The other thing to discuss is when we can meet and on what schedule. Let's see. Just bringing up our notes from previously thinking about this. So the idea that the workstream leads had was perhaps 8 a.m. Pacific, given that covers a wide range from kind of Europe to California. Doesn't work for much of APAC, so we could consider doing occasional APAC-friendly calls. But anyone have thoughts about cadence or schedule while we're all together in the big group right now?
Monthly, same time as this.
Yeah, if our European friends are okay with that, then this seems to work for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I would not do more than monthly, to be honest with you.
Okay, that's good input to have. And I think that we can discuss this as workstream leads, but my thought is that we're probably willing to and happy to accept help and input at various levels. So maybe we do bi-weekly calls. I'd say bi-weekly or monthly, but maybe if we do bi-weekly calls, then some folks could choose to join monthly. Any thoughts or input there?
Yeah, Alex, this is Carsten.
Yeah.
So one of the things we do in the NextG Alliance is we meet monthly, and whatever time, maybe this is the right time here. But then we have, let's say, little subgroups where we can meet individually, depending on whatever frequency we decide, in order to make effort toward a objective that then gets reported out on a monthly call to everybody else, because it's really difficult. I mean, if we have, I don't know, 50 people participating in a large group, to actually work on something and making significant progress, it needs to happen outside of that. That's my experience.
Carson, I think that's a great suggestion. Given the very large group that we have on the phone today, I think monthly meetings make sense, and then let's just make sure that we have assignments in smaller groups designated so that we can make progress and follow through on commitments within the month. And then, Sammy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm wondering, similar to OCP has work streams, subgroups. Is there any structure in iMasons? Can we get a kind of a list of people contacts?
Our working groups meet bi-weekly. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, Sammy.
I'm trying to see is any subgroups within the iMasons so that we can connect between those OCP groups and
the important. Yeah, go ahead, Miranda.
I was going to say, great question, Tammy. At present, we're just wrapping up getting our core working groups kicked off for the 2024 year. Once they are kicked off next week, we will kind of outline where we see the opportunities for those subgroups, especially in connection to this. So stay tuned. You'll probably see that in early February, where that opportunity is to get further engaged.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. So OCP, when you are developing the content, we can freely share between the OCP and iMasons here with this alliance here, or is there any restrictions there?
So the question then, Sammy, is about are we free to share freely between the two organizations?
Right.
My feeling is that, yeah, Cliff, go ahead.
Yes, the answer is yes. We're following. We're following all the typical OCP protocols for this workstream.
Okay.
So next steps here, I will share out the charter with this larger group, and anyone you're all invited to give feedback on that charter, and we will schedule a monthly cadence. And then I think in our next monthly cadence, let's start to dig in, figure out what steps we want to take from a working group standpoint and make assignments.
So out of this activity, there will be new working group for iMason Accord, or?
So this is the kickoff of a new working group that spans OCP and iMasons.
But within this working group will have some other teams working with different aspects of this thing, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And we can define those when we meet next, figure out what work do we want to get done, how do we divide that up into smaller groups and make those assignments.
Exactly. Thank you.
And if anybody just sharing kind of typical and similar OCP workstream and projects, via email with the workstream leadership here, if you want to volunteer for, driving an effort in one of those groups ahead of the next call in the month, there's plenty of time between the next meeting. So if you want to volunteer or have ideas on what things to tackle first, I would recommend suggesting that to this leadership team.
Fantastic. Thanks everybody for joining this call. Thanks for being excited about working on this. One last thing I would mention is that the OCP Global Summit is in October. And I think that that's a good goalpost for us as we think about our work. It would be nice to be able to stand up in front of that terrific audience in October and describe what we've accomplished by then. So take a look at the charter. There's some ideas on the charter in terms of milestones we can meet between now and then. and let us know what you think.
Yeah. One last question, Alex. What do we plan, or iMason in general has planned to collaborate with other standard organizations like IEEE or IATF?
We're
Actually,
working
I
on
can-
that right now.
Mhm.
Sorry, from the iMason side, that is a continued conversation with various industry organizations. We want to ensure, though, that it lines up with our mission towards carbon reductions and climate neutrality. So again, that is a larger discussion on the iMasons and the Climate Accord side. You will probably, again, see more of that coming up because we are very keen to ensure that we don't duplicate efforts, but that we work across the board. Cliff, it sounded like you wanted to say something as well.
Yeah.
Pretty complimentary to what you said, Amanda, for the OCP, that Miranda, for the OCP, that we're always open to alliances and when it makes sense. And so definitely we'll be open to looking at other bodies that want to get involved here as well from this work stream and also in other areas across the OCP.
And will that work extend beyond data center and include like the digital infrastructure of networking?
That is the goal. I mean, the foundation of the iMasons is the entire digital infrastructure industry. So again, for us on the ICA side, I would say sort of the quote unquote low hanging fruit is for us to get engaged with those three: power, equipment, materials work streams. And that really right now has been primarily on the data centers. We're not ruling anything out. And of course, to get to net zero carbon, all of it has to be included. So we will continue again to move forward. As I previously mentioned, though, we are still relatively in our infancy. And so I don't want us to overcommit to things. And really, we're working on the strategic timeline so that it all kind of continues to move forward with a good cadence and a good, effective, successful outcomes for all of you to capitalize on that work.
Very good. So we start with data center, but you are willing to enlarge the scope to include other things.
Absolutely.
Very good.
From the OCP side, that's the standards and best practices start within our organization. There are examples throughout the layers of infrastructure where things that are not directly involved, the core conversation of a data center, have adopted those specifications and standards outside of that first group. But we're here to start. That's why we formed the alliance with iMason's Climate Accord, and so that we're not reinventing the wheel and rowing in the same direction as we get started.
But the goal is net zero or absolute zero? With carbon
These are good guiding questions for us to discuss in the working group as we go forward.
Okay.
So yeah, think about those, gather them up, and we can talk them through next month.
Thank you.
So Sujata here. So what are the working groups within the iMason? Have you formed them yet?
Yeah, Miranda reviewed those at the beginning. So there's an equipment working group, materials, and power. And so we will be working most closely with the equipment working group here as we think through a labeling scheme.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that.
No problem.
I've just dropped a link so you can see those pages are being built out over the next month. So there'll be more information coming on our website.
So somebody.
All right,
I'll repeat
thanks,
myself
everybody.
because I heard some feedback, but there's a link for you on the working groups and you'll
Thanks,
see more
Miranda.
coming as they build out. No problem.
Looking forward to working with everybody. Have a good week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.